All right. Good morning, everybody. John Spiokla here with the GAI News Briefing, rating your top news, essential, important, or optional. I am joined today by David DeLello and Amanda Fetch. So we have a cool team here, ready to go over the news. We have all kinds of things. We have a new benchmark done by a friend of ours. We have also some small model activity as well as some new stuff out of OpenAI. So with that, let's get going on, Coach. Good morning, Paul. Good to see you. Oh, video calls for everyone. Not that. I got you ready. You want me to hit it up?
Yes. So the
Stage.
so
Here
the
we are.
first one that we have for today comes from our own Adam, and it talks about custom GPT and taking it through a more thorough evaluation.
All right. Interesting time. We have our own Adam Rappaport, who has managed to put together a new benchmark and so forth. Amanda, what do you think here? We're going to give Adam a pass or a fail?
Yeah, I gave Adam a pass. And not just because he's Adam, but yeah, so I really did like this article, and I think above all else, the takeaway here is custom GPT is beating OpenAI. And so I think it's important for the leader to understand that ChatGPT isn't the only player out there. And the article goes on with some different stats, things like that. It, was talking about a 13% higher accuracy rate, 10% lower hallucination rate than OpenAI. And that's huge. I mean, right now, I'm consistently hearing about transparency and reducing hallucinations, things like that. So, very important. But anyway, curious to hear others' thoughts, not just because it's Adam, but yeah, I thought he did a good job.
Yes, and just for clarity for those who don't know, this is about the RAG interface to the large models, right? And so, and it beats out the custom GPT, I mean, the chat GPT version of those. Yeah, what do you think here? David, Paul?
I mean, this is our guy, so I'm going to give it an important. I'm not going to go essential because I like to remain neutral, even though it is one of our authors, or one of our folks as an author. So I don't know that I can say that this elevates to essential, but I agree with Amanda that it's just important for everyone to know that, OpenAI isn't the only game in town, although I think that's increasingly being known in some of our articles that we'll talk about today. We'll kind of get into that a little bit more. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting piece of work, the way that they decided to run a different type of evaluation to test custom GPT. And as you said, John, this is more on its RAG capabilities. So 945 questions that they used to test the answers. And it was kind of like, is it a good answer or is it a bad answer? So very simple kind of evaluation. And, the custom GPT model did perform better in some ways. So I just thought it was interesting the way that they tested it. And for the other message that I mentioned about, just keeping in mind there's some other players out there. So I'd give it an important. I'm going to stop short of essential to keep us honest.
Yeah, I certainly am absolutely important here. I think the key thing I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 months is that helping executives understand that the visual they have right now for generative AI is wrong. So many people just think about ChatGPT, which is trained on all the internet and human knowledge on the internet, as the main thing. The main thing in the visual needs to be their data. And then ChatGPT or these large language models operating on this. And I think this is a great example of the value of this RAG implementation, retrieval augmented generation, which I think is an absolute killer app. Every single company in the world needs to have this on their public website and on their internal knowledge bases here. And it shows that thinking about your data with large language models answering questions is a different way to think about it than just large language models against a generic benchmark.
You're on mute, John.
Thanks. Yeah, and they also have, this clever interface. There's, dartboard where you can do the comparisons and so forth. I mean, what I thought was nice is that, Adam really walks the talk, not Adam, sorry. Adam really walks the talk here in terms of, building an article that he would expect from others, right? Very data rich, good responsiveness, clear on the benchmarks. What did they measure? What didn't? And also, Paul, you said it is a killer app for this thing, so I think it is. Actually, I'm gonna take the Republic part of a Republic democracy here and call this essential.
David, I knew that was coming. He just loves his chalk.
Hey, man, it's not fun. Remember, democracy killed Socrates. Okay. So we're gonna go Republic here, and I'm gonna rate this baby essential. Well, good job, Adam. All right, next.
Okay, the next one comes from OpenAI. OpenAI has launched a new model, GPT-4 Mini. So it's the most cost-efficient small model till now.
David, what do we think here?
All right, so I'm going to actually go essential on this announcement.
Okay.
I will tell you why. There's several reasons for this. So, as the title indicates, this is OpenAI's announcement about their smaller model. We don't know exactly the size. It didn't say the number of parameters in there. But basically, the reason why I think this is essential is multiple reasons. First of all, I have to go back and fact check myself, but I'm pretty sure that this is the first announcement or just the first blog post or article or whatever you want to call it from OpenAI ever that's got the word cost efficient in the title and just talks about cost in general right up front and like throughout the whole thing, right? So this is, a totally different OpenAI, right? Like we've gone from a year and a half ago. They're posting research. They're posting, information about how they're going to go for AGI, et cetera. And now they are like squarely, a money-making focused company, despite the fact that they still have this dual mission. The other thing is, this is, again, we don't know the parameter size, but this is really officially their first small model because their cheaper models are, GPT-4, GPT 3.5. Those are still gigantic models. They're just not as big as their newest one. So they're not really technically small models. They were just cheaper. And the other reason is just like this shows the shift that has happened, right? And it shows what we've been talking about and seeing in the marketplace that, people went to OpenAI first and they realized once they put it in production that it was incredibly expensive. And we're like, what, we can't do this. This costs too much. We got to find a new answer. And we've increasingly be talking to companies who have said, we are at least looking around for another solution, another model to plug in. So this, kind of shows the trend towards smaller models being used by enterprises because they're more cost efficient. OpenAI, finally putting their hat in the ring on this, their first small model. So to me, all of those reasons make this one essential. You're on mute again, John.
We have one vote for essential. Paul, Amanda, what do you think?
I don't know if I want to answer because
you're just going to get overruled anyway.
Yeah, John.
The president does not always use his veto. Okay.
You know what, David? I'm the complete opposite of you. I almost feel like there's information in there, but they're kind of patting themselves on the back. So I always get, weary of whenever they're kind of, literally patting themselves on the back, talking about all this great stuff, cost efficiency, things like that. I think it's important to note, but again, it's coming from them. So I almost wish it was someone else telling us this. Maybe I find it a little bit more believable. So for me, I'm more on optional side.
Yeah, well, I was, invoking the spirit of the article and the trends that it's pointing out. The actual text of the article. I mean, it's important because it does show the pricing too, by the way, which was, I believe, 15 cents per million tokens for inputs and 60 cents per million for outputs or something like that.
Yep.
Again, when have you ever seen OpenAI talk about price in their posts? So to me, again, it shows that we're in this next phase, basically, is why I'm indicating it as important, not necessarily the text itself. But what do you think, Paul?
Paul?
Everything's getting cheaper. The market wants cheaper, so they're saying cheaper. So I'm not surprised it's the marketing here. I had an optional category.
All right. Well, I'll give you some support there, David. We'll go for important. I think essential. Look, there's a lot of mini models out there. I hear you about the importance of GPT.
This is the market leader finally getting into the game. That, to me, that marks we have officially crossed the line of enterprises are, for the most part, not going to be using these larger models for much longer at all. But I appreciate the support to bringing it up for important.
All right, let's go for important. Next.
Okay, the next one comes from VentureBeat, and it talks about NVIDIA and Mistral's new model, Mistral Nemo, which is bringing enterprise-grade AI to desktop computers.
Yeah. So, Dr. Beyer, what's up?
We talked a lot about an important trend of AI models on devices like desktop computers and smartphones and machines and dishwashers. This one is just another trend in that, and I'm bringing out my Barney. It's we love you, you love us thing. It's certainly an important data point in there, but we're going to continue to see dozens and dozens of hardware vendors and software vendors with combinations like this. So,
but have we seen any yet? Or is this to me feels like one of the, I can't think of another hardware.
Yeah, look, Qualcomm Snapdragon with Microsoft.
Yeah, Qualcomm's what first comes to mind.
Yeah, Qualcomm's deep embedded in the Microsoft.
Okay. Didn't Dell announce something? Maybe
yeah.
It was a
Dell. Yes, Microsoft, Dell, Snapdragon, HP. So there was an announcement in Microsoft's event where the small model is coming to each of these different PCs through Snapdragon's processors.
So, Ankash, are you saying, wouldn't it be great if we had a tool that took all the articles we already discussed and we could ask it a question and get an answer in seconds?
There we go, Mr. Cobbler. Okay. David, you're going to make the case for something more than Bernie?
No.
Amanda?
Nope.
Okay. All right. The purple beast rules, optional. Next.
Okay, the next one comes from the Wall Street Journal and is authored by Isabel Busquet. And it talks about how companies are using AI models that are not really advanced, but pretty mid-class. And they are looking more at the cost efficiency of these models.
All right. We have our friends from WPP and so forth weighing in here saying don't waste your dough. Amanda, what do you think?
Yeah, I think overall as a general theme, it is important, right? To note this, that there is this shift sort of happening. But again, I think companies, when you're sitting there and you're the one that's sort of spending the budget or finding out, what you're going to do with your money, right? It's at the top of your mind regardless. So because of that, we could shift it to optional. But again, if for some reason you're not aware of that, I think it is important just to note this shift in general and the trends happening.
All right. David, Paul?
I mean, this is the reason why I made the case for the OpenAI article, right? Or article, I would call it an announcement. It's not an article, to indicate, that we've kind of crossed the threshold here where we're looking at smaller models in enterprises for the most part. I mean, there are some use cases where you need the big giant model going forward. I would still support the OpenAI announcement as being the better indicator of that than this article. So
let it go, David. Let it go.
I'm just telling you why I'm not going to go anything higher than important on this one.
Are we doing important, or Paul, where are you on this thing?
You know, I'll defer to the group. I mean, I think this is the good news is we're seeing the natural evolution of every single market here. That we're going to have some players that focus on price, some can focus on value, some are focusing on UI differentiation. So I think this is a natural inclination of it. I do like the fact that they're actually talking in the article about actual examples. So they used TD Bank, which was a custom GPT-4, the expensive high-end model, and they're looking at Cohere for some other things here. So I think it's a natural evolution. I'll defer to the group on the rating.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would actually argue the ChatGPT-4 thing, they had to have a smaller model because they're probably losing out.
Yeah, because they're losing business.
Yeah, and so, all right, let's give this guy an important. I originally had it as an optional, but I'm standing on Barney and now looking up into important.
It dovetails nicely with our other important article. I'll put them together in the newsletter because they're both about the same trend. So it would be weird if we rated one important and one not.
And no changing the ratings when you do the newsletter.
That's right.
As Vladimir Putin said to Donald Trump, it doesn't matter who votes and what they vote. It matters who counts the votes.
Well, I have to say, every now and then when I'm writing the newsletter and I recall our conversation about something, and it's we have a lot of conversation or we're saying really interesting things and we rated something optional, sometimes I am inclined to be like, are we sure we were optional if we had this really great conversation about it? But I never changed.
So Amanda, some things don't change. All the power really is the person behind the curtain.
This is true, always. All right, next.
And the next one comes from Forbes and is from Dell Technologies or sponsored by Dell Technologies, but it provides some really interesting use cases of GenAI across different industries.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out if this is sponsored content or news.
It is, I can let you know. So if you assigned this to me, and John, it's really unbelievable that you ended up assigning this to me because the author Clint Bolton is one of my best friends from college.
Oh,
Yeah.
So, and he works for Dell. So this is a piece of thought leadership, and you can tell once you get to the end, he starts to really bang on, the fact that these use cases that he talks about were supported by Dell. So he and I actually recently reconnected after kind of losing touch for 6 or 7 years. He's been a tech writer for a very long time. He worked for the Journal, et cetera. And now he's over at Dell. So I'm going to show that I do not show favoritism, even though this is someone I'm very close to. At first, when I read the first use case that he talked about and, gave a lot of data. So the first use case he talks about here is, reading X-rays, which is something that AI has been used for a long time. But this one, he actually showed really good data about how much it improved speed, and the doctors, were using it, et cetera. So I was like, oh, this is going to be a pretty good article. I might, even though I know Clint, I might still have to go important on this one. But then when you look at the next use case, which is fascinating, there's a company that's using computer vision to basically take a 360-degree snapshot of a train when it's moving at 125 miles per hour to then use it to check for any issues on the train. So it's kind of a predictive maintenance type of thing. However, that solution uses kind of traditional AI, not Gen AI. They do talk about the company that created that using Gen AI for some future use cases. But and then at the end, we hear about the Dell AI factory and stuff, of course. So I'm going to go optional on this one. I'm sorry, Clint, but you did a nice job writing it. It's a nice piece of Dell sponsored content, but I'm going to go optional.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to pause on some of the numbers here. So if you look in the the frame that Ankash has up here, I mean, look at this thing, 40%, 40% improvement in radiology, and new radiologists doing as well as people who've been radiologists for 15 to 20 years. I don't know. For me that and the train thing was amazing. I mean, it pushed it to important for me. But
Yeah, as I said, I thought this was great too. I just it kind of, as you read through the article, it got a little less impactful. But I could support important, of course.
David, you said this is your best friend from college?
Yeah.
Wow, what a small world. Yeah. I mean, radiology to me is interesting because I think the analogy is GPS maps. You know, we don't drive anywhere without a map, and I don't think we don't do radiology today without AI robot at least getting a second view on it.
yeah, absolutely. Amanda, where are you on this thing?
Yeah, it's tough for me too, like David was saying, because typically for use cases for me, if you're not in the industry, I typically rate them as optional, even though it's great to read about. But there is diversity in these use cases, so it's touching on more people and more leaders, I feel like. So I could definitely go important on this one for that reason.
All right, let's land on important. Awesome. And the last one.
The last one that we have comes from Air Street Press, and it talks about the state of Chinese AI.
Yeah, very interesting. Puts and takes, ebbs and flows here. Not sanctions, but restrictions. Paul, what's up?
You know, I think a lot of talk today here. A lot of opportunities and fluidity in the Chinese market, but I think right now for the AI leader, this is a decent summary, but optional.
Interesting.
All right, I'm going to make an argument for important only because it's Friday. And so the AI leader has some time over the weekend. And I think this is a fascinating piece. We've been talking about for months, right? We've seen what this article is saying, which is basically, don't count out the Chinese here. We've seen a lot of the research that we bring in here to talk about is coming from Chinese researchers. And, despite the restrictions that they have for compute, because they don't have the top chips from NVIDIA. Well, actually, as this article says, they do have some of the top chips because they stockpiled them before the U.S. sanctions went in. And, it talks about a variety of their models that are performing very well. And they may jump into the lead soon because, as this article discusses, because they've had limits on compute, they've been focused on efficiency of models. And as we just talked about with all of, several of the articles that we went through today, that's what AI leaders are looking for right now, efficiency, because they can't spend this enormous amount of money that it costs to run the really large models. I just thought this was really interesting, and for a weekend read for an AI leader, I'm going to put it important just because I want them to get familiar with this space. I know it has nothing to do with their day-to-day for the most part, but that's my take.
Amanda?
Yeah, this is a tough call for me because, again, if you're not operating necessarily in China, but it's one of those things where it's like, are they going to bypass us? So I'm struggling if I don't know if it's important or not, just to be aware of what's happening globally. I mean, typically that's what we like to do as business leaders, right? Is always be up to speed on what's happening globally. But again, this is literally just pounding away at China. I don't know. I'm not a good one for this.
If it was a Monday, I'd probably go optional because I'd say, oh, look, you're busy this week, folks. Maybe tag this one for the weekend. But because it's a Friday and they have that time, and you made my point in a much more succinct way, Amanda, thank you. As a business leader, you do need to be aware of what's going on all around the world. So there we have it.
Yeah, I think I give it important. I mean, this is a whole nother ecosystem, and as you say, many times throughout history, constraints equals innovation, right? And so, and they certainly have the commitment to it. And I think it's also interesting to see going to be interesting to see what happens in the relationship with Europe and so forth. If the next administration pulls back from NATO and Europe, I think we're going to see much more of a symbiosis. And we do need to remember that a lot of these innovations came out of London, right? And France is coming on strong. So, I mean, the frontier models all are a progeny of a combination of DeepMind and Google. And DeepMind is in London, right? And so, anyway, it's going to be interesting dynamics. All right, so we're going to do this baby important. Ankaj, where are we? Give us a big tote board.
We definitely had a liberal Friday.
Well, I have 5 children, and I would say I was the most, most lenient parent for my 5th child, and now I have 2 pugs, and they're completely undisciplined. So there you go. You do run out of energy. So no, I don't think that's true. We hold our standards throughout the week, throughout the month.
Now, these legitimately were important.
All right. We have essential, important, optional, important. All right. We have some good reading for the weekend. We will have the Learning Lab on Monday. Don't have the title for you, but last week we had a great one with some new tools in Korean RAG architecture. And look forward to seeing you all on Monday morning and maybe Monday evening in our Learning Lab. So bye-bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.